America cannot win a war over Taiwan, and Beijing knows it. You may not want to hear this analysis, but the strategic mathematics are brutal, and the outcome is predetermined. What we're facing isn't a fair fight between equals. It's a geographical, technological, and economic mismatch that favors China so decisively that American military planners should be asking not how to win, but how to avoid humiliating defeat. The intelligence reaching my sources in the Pentagon tells a sobering story. American war games consistently show catastrophic losses in any Taiwan conflict scenario. Aircraft carriers sunk by hypersonic missiles. Airfields in Japan and Guam cratered by precision strikes. The few simulations where America achieves tactical victories require Chinese restraint that no rational Chinese leadership would show when fighting for core national interests. China holds every strategic advantage that matters for modern warfare: geography, demographics, industrial capacity, technological capabilities, economic leverage, and most critically, political will to accept costs that American society cannot tolerate. Beijing isn't just better positioned to win this war. Beijing is positioned to win decisively while inflicting losses that would end American global dominance permanently. The geographic reality alone makes American victory nearly impossible. Taiwan sits 100 miles from mainland China and 7,000 miles from the American West Coast. Chinese missiles can hit Taiwan in minutes while American reinforcements require weeks to arrive. Chinese forces operate from dozens of nearby bases, while American forces depend on a handful of vulnerable installations in Japan and Guam. Naval warfare has been revolutionized by precision missiles that make large surface vessels obsolete in contested waters. American aircraft carriers, the foundation of American power projection, become massive targets in the Taiwan Strait. Chinese DF-21D anti-ship ballistic missiles travel at Mach 10 and can sink carriers from 1,000 miles away. Chinese submarines can launch attacks from underwater positions that American sonar cannot detect until too late. The technological balance has shifted decisively toward China in the systems that matter most for Taiwan conflict. Chinese hypersonic weapons travel too fast for American defensive systems to intercept. Chinese electronic warfare capabilities can disable American communications and navigation systems. Chinese cyber weapons can cripple American military networks before physical fighting even begins. American technological superiority in traditional platforms means nothing when those platforms cannot reach the battlefield intact. American allies will not fight for Taiwan despite decades of security commitments and strategic partnerships. Japan faces Chinese missiles that can destroy every major Japanese city within hours of conflict beginning. South Korea confronts North Korean invasion supported by Chinese logistics if Seoul joins American operations. Australia recognizes that Chinese economic retaliation would devastate the Australian economy, regardless of military outcomes. European NATO members consider Taiwan an Asian problem that doesn't justify risking Chinese relations. The economic dimensions of Taiwan conflict favor China overwhelmingly. China is the largest trading partner for most major economies, while America offers mainly security guarantees that become worthless if American military power is defeated. Chinese control of rare earth minerals, manufacturing supply chains, and global shipping networks provides leverage that America cannot match with military threats or financial sanctions that would damage American allies more than Chinese interests. American domestic politics cannot sustain the casualties and costs that Taiwan defense would require. American public opinion has no appetite for major war casualties after Iraq and Afghanistan experiences that produced minimal strategic gains at enormous human and financial costs. Chinese society is prepared for massive sacrifice to prevent national humiliation and territorial dismemberment, while American society expects quick victories with minimal American casualties that Taiwan conflict cannot deliver. Military logistics reveal the impossibility of American victory in any sustained Taiwan conflict. American ammunition production cannot replace the munitions that would be expended in days of high-intensity warfare against Chinese forces. American shipbuilding capacity cannot replace the naval vessels that Chinese missiles would sink. American pilot training cannot replace the aircrew losses that Chinese air defenses would inflict. China fights with the industrial capacity that produces most of the world's military electronics, while America depends on supply chains that Chinese economic warfare can sever. Chinese missile forces represent the most decisive advantage in any Taiwan scenario. China deploys over 1,000 conventional missiles targeted at Taiwan, while also maintaining thousands more aimed at American and Japanese facilities that would support Taiwan operations. Chinese missile production can sustain firing rates that would overwhelm any defensive systems, while Chinese mobile launchers can avoid American counterstrikes from positions throughout southern China. The air war over Taiwan would demonstrate Chinese advantages in every dimension that matters. Chinese Air Force operates from dozens of airfields within 500 miles of Taiwan, while American aircraft must travel thousands of miles from carriers or Japanese bases that Chinese missiles can destroy. Chinese surface-to-air missiles create overlapping coverage zones that deny American aircraft access to Taiwan airspace. Chinese fighter production can replace losses at rates that American industry cannot match with facilities located safely beyond American striking distance. Intelligence capabilities favor China through proximity and preparation advantages that American technology cannot overcome. Chinese surveillance systems monitor all American activities in the Western Pacific, while American intelligence relies on satellite systems that Chinese anti-satellite weapons can eliminate. Chinese agents throughout Taiwan provide real-time intelligence about American operations, while American intelligence networks in China remain limited and vulnerable to Chinese counterintelligence operations. American strategy depends on Japanese and South Korean bases that Chinese conventional missiles can neutralize within hours of conflict beginning. Kadena Air Base in Okinawa sits only 400 miles from Chinese missile sites and cannot be defended against massive Chinese attacks using conventional warheads. Guam Naval Base provides the nearest major American facility, but requires massive logistics to sustain operations while remaining vulnerable to Chinese submarine attacks on supply ships. The nuclear dimension provides the ultimate guarantee of Chinese victory, regardless of conventional military outcomes. China maintains sufficient nuclear weapons to destroy every major American city, while American nuclear retaliation would face the same geographic disadvantages that plague American conventional forces. Chinese nuclear doctrine explicitly includes nuclear escalation to prevent territorial losses, while American nuclear doctrine has never addressed scenarios where American homeland faces retaliation for overseas interventions. Industrial capacity comparisons show the futility of any prolonged American effort to defeat Chinese forces in Taiwan operations. Chinese steel production exceeds American production by ratios of 10 to 1. Chinese shipbuilding capacity launches more naval vessels annually than America has in its entire Pacific fleet. Chinese electronics manufacturing produces the semiconductors, sensors, and communications equipment that modern warfare requires, while American industry depends on Chinese suppliers for components that military systems require. The demographic mathematics reinforce every other Chinese advantage in Taiwan operations. Chinese military-age population exceeds American military-age population, while Chinese forces operate from home territory where casualties can be replaced immediately. American forces require extensive training and transportation to reach the Taiwan theater where losses cannot be replaced quickly. Chinese society is prepared for mass casualties to defend territorial integrity, while American society has no comparable commitment to Taiwan's independence. Chinese strategy for Taiwan operations reflects comprehensive understanding of American vulnerabilities and Chinese advantages. Chinese forces would begin operations by destroying American military capabilities in the Western Pacific before American reinforcements can arrive. Chinese missile strikes would eliminate airfields in Japan and Guam, while Chinese submarines attack American naval forces and supply ships. Chinese cyber attacks would paralyze American communications and logistics, while Chinese economic warfare creates domestic American crises that distract from military operations. The time factor provides another decisive Chinese advantage that American strategy cannot address. Chinese forces can complete Taiwan operations within weeks, while American military mobilization requires months to generate forces capable of challenging Chinese control. Chinese fait accompli strategy would present American leadership with the choice between accepting Chinese victory or escalating to nuclear warfare that threatens American homeland survival for the first time since the Cuban Missile Crisis. International law and diplomatic considerations favor Chinese positions that frame Taiwan operations as domestic reunification rather than international aggression. Most nations recognize the One China principle that makes Taiwan legally part of China under international law. American intervention would appear as foreign aggression against Chinese sovereignty, while Chinese operations would appear as domestic law enforcement against separatist rebellion. International opinion would support Chinese legal claims, while opposing American military interference in Chinese internal affairs. Financial market reactions to Taiwan conflict would create economic pressures that reinforce Chinese military advantages. Stock market crashes, currency disruptions, and supply chain collapses would create domestic American political pressure to end military operations quickly. Chinese economy is better positioned to withstand wartime disruptions, while American economy depends on global trade relationships that Taiwan conflict would sever. Economic costs of prolonged warfare would exceed American political tolerance, while Chinese society is prepared for economic sacrifice to achieve territorial reunification. Technology transfer consequences reveal the strategic implications of Chinese victory that extend far beyond Taiwan territorial control. Chinese capture of Taiwan semiconductor facilities would provide Chinese industry with advanced capabilities that currently depend on American and Japanese technology. Chinese control of Taiwan shipping lanes would enable Chinese regulation of Asian trade flows that connect global manufacturing networks. Chinese elimination of American military presence in the Western Pacific would establish Chinese regional hegemony that challenges American global position. The cascade effects of Chinese victory would restructure global power relationships in ways that favor authoritarian powers over democratic societies. Russian victory in Ukraine would become more likely as American attention and resources shift to Asian concerns while European allies lose confidence in American protection. Iranian nuclear weapons development would accelerate as Middle Eastern allies recognize American inability to prevent determined adversaries from achieving strategic objectives. The timeline for Chinese Taiwan operations reflects Chinese understanding of American vulnerabilities and optimal timing. Chinese military modernization will peak in the mid-2020s, while American military capabilities remain focused on Middle Eastern counterinsurgency rather than Pacific power projection. Chinese economic integration with regional partners will achieve levels that make economic retaliation prohibitively expensive for American allies. American strategic options following Chinese Taiwan operations would be limited to accepting defeat or escalating to nuclear warfare that threatens American homeland survival for uncertain benefits. Nuclear escalation over Taiwan would risk Chinese nuclear retaliation against American cities. Conventional escalation would require military capabilities that American defeat in Taiwan would prove ineffective against Chinese forces operating from Chinese territory. The fundamental strategic reality is that geography, demographics, industrial capacity, and political will all favor Chinese success in Taiwan operations, while American advantages and global reach become irrelevant when applied to conflicts near Chinese territory. American military planners understand these realities, while political leaders maintain public optimism that serves domestic political purposes rather than strategic effectiveness. Chinese leadership recognizes that Taiwan operations represent the decisive test of Chinese regional power and American global hegemony. Chinese success would establish Chinese dominance throughout the Western Pacific, while American failure would end American claims to global leadership that depend on military credibility. The strategic conclusion is unavoidable. America cannot win a war over Taiwan because China holds every advantage that matters for this specific conflict. American global power depends on the ability to project force anywhere in the world. But Taiwan sits in Chinese home waters where American force projection becomes impossible against determined Chinese resistance. Chinese victory would not just secure Taiwan for China. It would establish Chinese regional hegemony while ending American global dominance. Beijing holds all the cards because Beijing chose the battlefield, the timing, and the stakes for this confrontation. America must either accept Chinese terms for Taiwan's future or fight a war that America cannot win against an adversary that China cannot afford to lose. The strategic mathematics are brutal. The outcome is predetermined, and the consequences will reshape the global order regardless of American preferences. China knows it can win. America knows it cannot. The only question is whether American leadership acknowledges this reality before or after humiliating defeat demonstrates it to the world.